But we continued to deliberate, and in the course of our deliberations, we met with General Peter Schumacher and Colonel Jerry Boykin, former and present commanders of Delta Force, respectively, the Army's rough equivalent to the FBI's HRT, to review the plan. Their comments were instructive. While indicating that the plan appeared to be sound, one suggestion was that rather than an incremental approach to the use of the gas as proposed by the FBI, gas should be inserted into all portions of the compound simultaneously. I preferred the FBI approach, which called for a gradual increase in pressure over time. It seemed to me that that would be best to ensure the safety of those inside. I directed that if at any point Koresh or his followers threatened to harm the children, the FBI should cease the action immediately. Likewise, if it appeared that as a result of the initial use of tear gas, Koresh was prepared to negotiate in good faith for his ultimate surrender, the FBI was to cease operation. On the other hand, if Koresh and his followers endangered the agents by firing upon them, they were authorized to return the fire. To the great credit of the FBI, they received substantial fire from within the compound, both at the vehicles and at sniper positions surrounding the compound, without returning any fire. In fact, throughout the 51-day siege, the FBI never fired a single shot. Instead, when fired upon, the FBI responded by beginning to insert gas throughout the compound, consistent with what the Delta Force commanders had suggested. Commanders also expressed concern about the length of time the HRT had been on the scene in a state of constant readiness, and all expressed the view that the team would have to be pulled back for retraining very quickly if they were going to come back to the scene. All advised that there was not a substitute civil force that could secure the extensive area around the compound that had the expertise of the hostage rescue team. We continued deliberations. I wanted and received assurances that the gas and its means of use were not pyrotechnic. I was concerned about intentional or accidental explosion and ordered that additional resources be provided to ensure that there was an adequate emergency response if we should go forward. And I also considered that Koresh had talked about suicide, and that might occur at any time under conditions that the FBI might be less likely to control. Experts, however, advised the Bureau that the chances of suicide were not likely. But I again emphasized that it was something that was considered that might happen at any point along the way, regardless of what the FBI did. In considering the FBI proposal, I weighed the many concerns of the government with respect to the state of affairs inside the compound. They included the well-being of the children in the compound, given the deteriorating sanitary conditions, the apparent lack of adequate medical care inside, and reports of sexual and other abuse over the past. The vulnerability of the outer perimeter, which created a threat to public safety and the federal agents at the perimeter. The outer perimeter was vulnerable because there were inside the compound 50 caliber weapons having an effective killing range of 3,000 yards, a distance that would reach from the U.S. Capitol to the White House. Our inability to maintain the presence of the HRT on site indefinitely, and the advice I received that there was a lack of a suitable substitute force that could replace them at the compound and ensure the security of all involved. Fourth, the increasing risk as the standoff continued of injury to federal agents, whether by accident or by the risk of shooting from the inside. Since being sworn in as Attorney General, I have had numerous conversations with people both inside and outside the Department of Justice concerning the Waco situation. In addition, I directed my staff to keep the White House apprised of ongoing developments. My discussions with representatives at the White House were predicated on the premise that as Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the decision on how to proceed was mine. I advised the President on the Sunday before the operation of my decision to authorize the FBI's use of tear gas at the compound, and he said he would support my decision. I believe we were dealing with a situation that would not resolve itself by mere acquiescence to the standoff. Negotiations had proven to be fruitless, and despite our best efforts, we could not secure the release of the children. It was a situation that suggested to me that time would only increase the risk to public safety, to the safety of government agents, and to those within the compound, without any realistic expectation that the matter would be resolved peacefully if we did nothing. It was my call, and I made it the best way I know how. Let me urge that we focus on the future. and to try to determine how we can best avoid the recurrence of this tragedy. In this regard, at the President's request, we in the Department of Treasury are looking at a process whereby the events at Waco will be examined by experts both within and outside the government to consider the following questions. 1, in the execution of the arrest and search warrants by ATF, were established procedures followed, and if so, were they adequate? 2, is federal law enforcement adequately prepared to negotiate in dangerous situations in terms of training, staffing, and available techniques? 3, is training for the execution of warrants involving barricaded suspects who may be holding innocent third parties adequate for all law enforcement agencies? 4, are improvements needed in coordinating the activity of the various investigative agencies? 5, how should federal law enforcement agencies marshal resources in various disciplines, including psychology and psychiatry, in situations involving cults and other groups using barricades and holding innocent people? 6, what systems and understandings about command and control should guide the relationships among leaders of the departments and career officials and operating units when field operations impose a substantial risk of danger to law enforcement officials and others? The incident at Waco ended tragically for all involved. I have thought every day since April 19th about what I might have done differently. I only hope that we can work together to make sure that I never have to make such a decision again. I would be glad to answer any of your questions.